Steve Lazarus, author, retired FBI special agent, and United States Air Force veteran. Behind the Badge, a retired FBI agent's journey into writing. I introduce the one and only Steve Lazarus, FBI agent turned author, and I know you'll love the show as much as I did. Steve is a first-time author, retired FBI special agent, and United States Air Force veteran. He served 22 years in the FBI, spending the first half of his career investigating drug trafficking organizations and violent street gangs. Later, he became a full-time bomb technician, an assignment which led him to Iraq, Kuwait, and Afghanistan as part of the global war on terror. After retiring from the Bureau, he spent several years as a national security contractor in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Steve's journey from law enforcement to literary success is nothing short of inspiring. His debut novel, Call Me Sonny, is a thrilling dive into the world of a hitman network operating in the shadows of the dark web. And the kicker? It's inspired by a real-life threat Steve faced during his FBI days. Steve's debut novel was inspired by one of his real-life cases. After arresting a subject who threatened to unleash a bioterror attack on the Atlanta subway system, Steve and his partner found themselves on the receiving end of a death threat from the soon-to-be convicted felon. And though that subject would spend the next 25 years in prison, Steve couldn't help but wonder, what if he could make good on his threat, even from behind bars? The most logical solution would be if he hired a hitman, and voila, a novel was born. Talk about authenticity. Call Me Sonny was a labour of love, incorporating the personalities, anecdotes, and experiences of Steve's multifaceted FBI career, and it'll be the first in a series of Bryce Chandler crime thrillers. Straight Talk. We get real about the impact of 9/11 and the complexities of the Afghan withdrawal and the intersection of politics and law enforcement. Steve's insights are a reality check we all need in a world where words are often twisted and accountability seems scarce. Perception is key. Steve reminds us that it's not just about being a quiet professional. Sometimes you got to confront the noise head on. And in a society polarized to extremes, his middle ground stance is a breath of fresh air. The cliffhanger. Call Me Sonny left us hanging, but Steve's already 30,000 words deep into the sequel, Finding Sonny. Will it be a duo or a trilogy? Stay tuned to find out. Social media sensation. With 250,000 TikTok followers and a strong Instagram presence, Steve's not just a writer, he's a social media phenomenon. And he's got the humour to match, joking about conspiracy theories and the power of perception. So, if you're ready to dive into a world where fact meets fiction and the thrills are as real as they get, tune into this latest episode of the Straight Talk Mind and Hustle podcast and join us as we explore the mind behind the book with Steve Lazarus. You can find Steve at the show notes below. Click on the links, stevelazarusbooks.com, and on Insta at instagram.com/Steve Lazarus Books. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from hownottodie.com.au. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by these guys, mystate.com, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients, it provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient, gut-friendly capsule. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest this morning, all the way from the United States again, Steve Lazarus.
Hey, good morning, Damien. How are you? And thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for organizing this. I was quite excited, and I don't often get a chance to record a show on the weekend, so I appreciate it. Man, you've got an awesome background. Love what you're doing. FBI author, veteran, and of course, in the show notes that people have heard just before this with the intro, I've got all those there. But wow, you wrote a fictional book, and it looks awesome. I love this synopsis. What got you into doing that? And then can we talk about what the book's about?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So what got me into writing is it's just something I've always kind of done well. Your audience can look at me and tell that I'm never going to be confused with Tom Cruise. I did okay in school. I didn't bust that curve too hard either side. I didn't make anybody too mad at me on either side of the curve. I played a lot of sports. I lettered. I didn't star. No one was ever going to hire me to come play professional sports for them. So I was kind of right down the middle in a lot of the stuff that I did. But one thing, ever since I was a little kid, that people always told me that I could do is I could write. They told me that in the Air Force. They told me that in the FBI. They told it in elementary and high school. So there came a point after my FBI career was over, and I had a pretty solid idea in my mind what I wanted to write about and what genre I wanted to stay in. There came a point where I found myself over in Abu Dhabi, or I was doing contract work, and my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, she had a contract. I did not have a contract, so I was kind of sitting around the hotel room, going to the gym, going to the pool, taking naps and stuff like that. And I said, darn it, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start this book. What inspired the book was a case of mine from 1999. And in 1999, I arrested a guy in Atlanta, Georgia, who was threatening to use a weapon of bioterror, ricin, if you're familiar, on the Atlanta subway over the 4th of July holiday. And when we arrested him, we got him into court, and there in his very first appearance before the magistrate, myself and my partner are sitting behind him in the little pew behind him, because we're responsible for him until he gets actually indicted or charged by the magistrate. And he turns around and he promises that when he gets out of jail, he's going to kill me and my family, and he's going to kill my partner and his family. And we're both a couple of young agents back then. I was 36 years old, and we just kind of wrote it down. Said, "All right, yeah, thanks for telling us that." We made sure the prosecutor found out about it, and he got 5 more years. He's still in prison. He's actually scheduled to get out this July. He was in Supermax. He was in Florence, which is the only United States Supermax federal prison. It's called AdMax. It's in Florence, Colorado. And he's actually scheduled to get out. Well, I get tabs on him over the years because, a guy threatens to kill you, you kind of take it seriously.
Yeah.
And my now ex, but at the time, my current wife was really concerned about it. And she said, "Well, what's the deal with him?" I said, "He's locked up. Don't worry about it." She said, one day she says, "Well, what if you could hire a hitman? What if you could just hire a hitman from inside prison to come after us?"
Yeah.
And I sort of gave it a dismissive wave, because I look at me, look how cool I am, look how stoic I am. And as I got to think about it a few years later, that's actually something that could happen. It served as the inspiration for my book called Me Sonny. So in the book, it starts off with a guy who's in AdMax. His name is Travis Conway, and all these names are all made up. The inspiration stops at at my guy. The rest of it from all then on is fiction. But a guy named Travis Conway gets a visit from somebody that he's summoned to the prison, and he gives him a list of people to kill. And this guy is connected to a network, and it's called the Network of Murder for Hire Assassins that operates on the dark web. And the book proceeds from there.
Wow. Just listen, when I read the synopsis that you sent through in our email chat, I was excited to read it. It reminded me of another guest on the show, a former special boat service operator, Ollie Ollerton. He's done a few non-fiction books, but when he delved into fiction, it was just great because we got some real world input behind it. You look at the Vince Flynn's, the Grey Man series, those sort of things. They're writers who are doing research, but I think it's very different when you got the actual operator like yourself writing it, and yeah, our imagination comes out. So yeah, really, really exciting genre. And Jack Carr is probably the one that's of the most recent ilk that does that, and has actually turned into a TV series as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it as real as I can. At the end of the day, you got to take some literary license. I'm reminded, for instance, I was the last 12 years I was in the FBI. I was a bomb technician, and we went to go see The Hurt Locker, And, some of my friends who were also bomb technicians, just said, I just can't watch it. It's so unreal. It's so this, it's so that. And I remember telling them, guys, what we actually do for a living, no one's going to pay $12 to sit for 2 hours and see that. They had to
Exactly.
Hollywood that up a little bit. So yeah, you got to take a little bit of literary license, but I tried to remain as true as I could to myself. So the hero, Bryce Chandler, he's not some superhero. He's just kind of an ordinary guy. He's actually quite flawed. He got pretty much kicked out the door of the FBI, and it ends up kind of down on his luck down in the Florida Keys as a private investigator, and that's when he sort of happens upon all of these things that are going on.
I hope that it takes off as a series. The ones I mentioned, they're entertaining. I'm a former operator, and it's like watching Extraction, perhaps with Chris Hemsworth. Um, it's literary license, as you say, but it's fun. It's fun for us to read, and that's what yours seems like.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. And speaking of the series, I'm about 30,000 words into the sequel. I was actually writing it this morning before I started getting ready for this.
Oh, awesome! I'm excited. It's interesting you mentioned the Hurt Locker. Barry Rice, New Zealand SAS operator, and he just put a book out. We Were Blackwater. His interview comes out very soon, but where he was on the recording in December, and he actually starred in and worked on the Hurt Locker as well as Zero Dark 30. So it's quite a small world of operators. I mentioned Extraction before, and there's a guy, Chili Palmer, a Delta Force guest that's been on the show as well. So really interesting going into the creative realm after such a high speed environment. So I guess that's where we'll go to soon. You mentioned bomb technician and FBI, and we're going to definitely look at that. But the other side of things that made you stand out, and you do stand out, Steve, and take that as a good way. um, your social media and even just a quick Google search on you, just boom, 5 reasons I would never do this, 3 reasons I never do DNA testing, and all these things out there. And it resonated with what I do. But how did you get such a footprint, not only on social media, but I literally had a Google search on, and it was all these publications. How did you get such a footprint there that was so successful?
Yeah, it all started with the book. So I had a sit down with a friend of mine in the neighborhood where I live, and his job, he used to do promos for rock bands, and still does. He
Wow.
still does marketing for rock bands. And look this guy up. There's pictures of him with, oh my God, Maroon 5 and Stevie Wonder. I mean, he was an A-lister. And he said, look, man, for what you need to do as an independent author, what you need to do is you need to get your brand out there. If you're Stephen King, if you're John Grisham, you've got your publisher doing all this for you. If you're Steve Lazarus from Beaufort, South Carolina, you need to hustle and you need to get out there and make a name for yourself. And he said, what you need to do is you set up a Facebook page, an author page, you get an Instagram account, you get a TikTok account, and start putting out a few reels, sort of introducing yourself to people. So I thought, okay, I did that. I swore I would never be on TikTok, and here I am now. And I noticed that all these people were putting out these 5 things I would never do type series, as a cardiologist, as a nutritionist, as a professional trainer, as a former special operator. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do 5 things I would never do as a former FBI agent, kind of lean into the common sense sort of life rules and life lessons that I learned coming along. And the first one that I did was I would never allow my kids to have unlimited, supervised internet access. And I explained why. I explained that a 12-year-old is a target for really, really savvy techno creeps out there who were experts at getting them to do things that they shouldn't do. And I was really surprised because I got a lot of amens, and I got a lot of people saying, well, you must have been one shitty father, man. I would have never talked to you again if
Oh
if you
no.
had treated me that way. And my God, you have to trust your children. And I said, you don't trust a 12-year-old.
No.
There's a reason you can't rent a car until you're 25. Your brain's not fully developed yet, certainly not at 12. So I kept going, and I was just sitting there, and I'm literally sitting in the house that I'm sitting in right now. I thought, you know what? I saw one of those 23andMe or Ancestry.com. I said, I would never do that. My God, the privacy concerns and turning over the very most innermost essence of yourself to either the government or a private company or the Chinese, which is where it all ends up when it's all hacked. And I went ahead and sat down and did that reel in about, I don't know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I sent it off to my social media gal, Janet, who's up in Charlotte, North Carolina. She did some editing, put it together, and holy shit. You know how, I don't know if you've ever had a reel go viral or a TikTok or anything like that go viral, but you're literally sitting there watching and you're watching the numbers just spin and spin and spin. And it was at a million views before the end of the first day.
Wow.
And then we said it might hit 2 million. Well, as of this morning, it's at 9 million.
Wow.
And then the next thing that happens is I get a call from the Daily Mirror. Um, actually, it wasn't a call; it was an email.
Yeah.
They said, "Hey, we saw your story. You know, we'd like to go ahead and just feature it in one of our stories." I said, "Yeah, no problem." They were just asking my permission. They were being good folks and
Yep.
saying, "Is it okay to use your content?" And we'll credit it back to you and everything. I said, "Yeah, fine." I expected it might be put down in the bottom of, oh, and by the way, while we're talking about the subject, here's some goof from the United States who says the following. No, it was its own standalone front pager on the Daily Mail online. And then I think the Independent picked it up as well. It just went nuts. I have actually a very good friend of mine. I don't know if you ever had him on your show, Kim Hughes, who is a legend in the UK EOD side of the house. Kim is a George Cross recipient for some amazing work he did in Afghanistan. And Kim called me up. He said, "Mate, you are blowing up the tabloids over here." And I took a look, and it got legs. That's how it got legs. And of course, as I'm sure you know, once you have something like that go viral, it drags all the rest of your content along with it.
Yeah.
So everything else. And then the next thing that happened was book sales started shooting through the roof.
Oh, congratulations. It's so good to hear that success. And I love that it's from authenticity. It was from you literally saying to yourself, this is a thing that I do or don't do. Hey, why don't I share that with people that might want to know that? And clearly 9 million other people want to at least have a conversation about it or want to know about it. Wow, that's really, really cool. And people really do, try and push the social media side of things. But uh, just the way you come across, your approach, you're affable, you're friendly. It's very different than I've seen the exact same approach from a former CIA operator as well, and his doesn't really seem to have legs, whereas yours is just very authentic, which is what really goes these days. Man, you mentioned the rice and the actual crime that you had that person for as the inspiration for your book. I was actually a police officer here in Western Australia, and I think that was developed out here in Western Australia, in the middle of nowhere, with 4 sheep for the Tokyo subway hit as well.
You talking about the Rinko guys? That was sarin.
Oh, sorry.
They
Yeah,
used
sorry,
sarin
I
gas,
confused the
but yeah,
two. Yeah, so they developed the sarin out here. It's what I'm getting at is the global reach of what you actually went through. So coming back to the book as well, the sarin gas in the Tokyo subway was tested here in the middle of Australia. Did you guys hear about that? I'm sure you probably would have.
I did not know that. Was it tested on animals there, or?
4 sheep. So I left New Zealand and New Zealand Special Forces, came here into police in 2009, and at Police Academy, it was in the newspapers, so it's not confidential information. But they had tested it. These Japanese guys had tested on 4 sheep, and they after they tracked them back from the Japanese incident, they tracked this all the way back to the. It's as remote. It's like the middle of Texas. It's a very remote sort of place here.
Right. Yeah. So what you're saying actually reminds me of a video that I still can't shake that they made me watch when I was in the Air Force and going through my chem warfare training. It It was taken at one of the Army bases where they used to do this, and it was a drop of VX in the eye of a sheep. And we
Oh,
had to sit there and watch that sheep die for like 12 minutes and watch it convulse and foam at the mouth. And I thought, you could just tell us, don't get this shit in your eyes. Or, you could tell me this is really, really bad stuff. I will take your word for it. Can you please turn this off? Can't stand watching animals suffer. I know it was necessary, but
oh, it's that segues really well to the FBI side of things, because we are really the shield. I mean, you just talked about something you can't unsee, and I've seen a lot of things I can't unsee in the different jobs, but we're the shield between the public and those bad guys. You're the shield between that guy you locked up and the people that he wanted to hurt with a chemical weapons attack. What made you join the FBI? And I'd like to follow that up with, what the hell is the FBI? I think you're the first
sure.
FBI agent, or former FBI agent we've had in the podcast world, because your law enforcement in the States is very different. So what made you join the FBI, and then what is the actual role of the FBI?
I was a military police officer in the Air Force, and I had a criminal justice degree, and later on went on and got my MBA. But I always, always, always had an interest in law enforcement, one way, shape, or form. And then the Air Force sent me to a place called Minot, North Dakota, Minot. It is 40 miles from the Canadian border. It is the coldest place I've ever been in my entire life, and we used to say it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from here. It, and it really, really motivated me to go do something else. And as it turns out, I actually applied to two organizations. I applied to the FBI and I applied to the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, at the same time. And the FBI just got back to me faster and said, if you'd like to come, take our test, you can come take our test. So I flew to Chicago. I took a test. I passed it. I flew off to Minneapolis and I sat in a 3-person interview. I passed that. I went through a polygraph. I went through a background investigation. They talked to every person I'd ever known in my entire life. And eventually on January 5th, 1997, actually the anniversary of it was yesterday, I ended up standing at Quantico, raising my right hand and joining the FBI. I always saw the FBI, and I still do, as being the major leagues, if you will, the Premier League, if that helps, of law enforcement here in the United States. And it is very important. You're going to say, what is the FBI? It really is important to understand the difference between the FBI and local law enforcement. So we all really do work together, despite what you've maybe seen on some TV shows and in some movies. We actually work quite well together, and I was on more task forces than I ever was on squads that just contained FBI agents. So I worked more with state and local and other federal agencies than I did with just my fellow FBI agents. The FBI is a federal agency, so we're part of the executive branch of government. We fall under the Department of Justice. So you have the Department of Justice, which is run by the Attorney General of the United States. He is not officially a cabinet member, but he is a cabinet level member. So the Attorney General of the United States runs the Department of Justice, and then one of the agencies underneath that is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI it's not wrong to think of it as a national police force, but we're not out writing tickets, and we're not out enforcing, child custody orders and things like that. We're enforcing federal laws. And the most important thing that we do post 9/11, and this was very clearly stated by Director Mueller, he said, from this day forth, the FBI's #1 mission, and this will never change, is to protect the American people against another terrorist attack.
Wow. That's another thing that you and I have in common. Literally, my job was to rescue the hostages on the counter-terrorist team. So it's so easy to be single-minded. So you were a baby FBI agent when 9/11 happened. Would that be correct?
No, I wouldn't say a baby. I was 4.5 years in at that point. I was certainly not towards the end of my career, but it's one of those days for sure. It's I think everybody. I don't know if this extends worldwide, but it's one of those. I know where I was when, and where I was actually at Quantico that morning. I was going to an advanced firearms instructor in service. I was a firearms instructor for 18 of my 22 years. And I was an advanced firearms instructor in service where we learned to teach other people. And the instructor got called out of the room. We're sitting there, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning or 8:45 or something. And the instructor gets called out of his room. No one had ever seen that before. There's certain things that are sacrosanct at the FBI Academy. You don't ever, ever, ever interrupt an instructor when he's on the podium teaching. He got pulled out of the room and we were like, oh my God, I hope his mom didn't die or something like that. Guy's name was Gary Hutchison. He comes back in about 10 minutes later. He's kind of white-faced. He tells us what went on. And we all went and sat down and around a TV in his office. And we were literally watching it when the first and the second tower fell.
Wow. I remember where I was, and you're so right. There's not many times I'd thought about my parents when they heard about JFK, which I should ask you about, being FBI. I remember where I was in a fire base at 1,100 meters in East Timor. We were there on a mission, and I was walking past. We were in camp for a couple of days, and walking past the comms shack, and this guy leans out the window, and he says, "Oh, jets have just flown into the World Trade Center." So we've got no TV, nothing. That we don't have information up there. It was very rural. And he's a really funny guy. So I was waiting for the punchline. It was like the two guys walk into a bar sort of thing. And that was literally it. And funny, you remember where you were. A lot of people literally remember seeing on a TV. We didn't see the footage until 3 weeks later when someone sent us a videotape to put into the VCR.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And now we have people on police forces and in the military who weren't alive on 9/11.
Wow, that's a way to make a man feel old.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Look, covering off on that, you were there, literally, you saw that FBI instructor told about that when it happened. What are your generalized thoughts around all these things that have come out? I won't say conspiracy theories, but just all these ideas around it. What's your thoughts on that?
Talking about like 9/11 conspiracies, that kind of stuff, like people actually were sneaking explosives into the building and drilling holes in it over a period of 6 months and planting dynamite, and they faked 2 airplanes. I think there has to come a point at which we all have an internal bullshit detector that just kind of goes off and says, oh, okay, come on, man. You cannot expect me to believe this. I think conspiracy theories come from, well, sometimes they come from conspiracies, but more often than not, they come from people who either A, cannot accept the truth of what just happened because it's too much for their mind, or they don't want to admit what just happened. Or they want to appear like the smartest person in the room. They want to appear like they're in on something that you and I just don't know about. And if only we'd listen to them, they'll get us smart on it. So, there are some conspiracy theories that I'll listen to a little bit. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but the notion that 9/11 was anything other than a couple of airplanes flying into a building, we got sucker punched, man. They caught us with our pants down. Nobody ever thought it was genius. Box cutters, for crying out loud. And nobody thought that it could be done, but it was done. It won't happen again, but it was well planned and well executed.
Thank you. I appreciate your, I think, pragmatic. I mean, I'm an operator on a podcast, so I think that's the right word. You're the author, but quite a pragmatic answer. And you're right. I remember when the mosque shooting happened for New Zealand, I was literally speaking to an operator on Messenger when it was going on, and I see different conspiracy ideas come out when you actually know. Maybe sometimes I've actually been involved in those things, and it's kind of like a fiction book. They take a little bit of reality and expand it out, like the Grey Man or Jack Carr as protagonist as well. But yeah, I think you've nailed it 100% there. So I just wanted to get literally someone who is there in the weeds in the FBI's take on that, on what people are sort of concocting these things for.
So Yeah, so let's stay on that for just 1 second because I can share something that's very similar in the United States to your mosque shooting, which was, my God, that was a horrible day. Every time there's a mass shooting here in the United States, which is to say today, tomorrow, the next day, just about, um, the conspiracy theorists start out with, especially if it's an especially bad one, this is a government false flag operation and they're coming after our guns. I think they would have got them by now. I think if it was the false flag operation, I think the laws would have been passed. I think they would have, sort of like they've done in New Zealand and something like they did in Scotland after Dunblane. I think they probably would have said, okay, everybody out of the pool, we're taking your guns now, F off.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. But it doesn't stop people every single time there's a mass shooting from saying this was done to take attention away from Donald Trump or from Joe Biden or for to enact new laws to come get your guns. And Damien, the fact of it is, there's just 7 billion people in this world, and some of them are really, really shitty human beings, and they do really shitty things.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it than that.
I appreciate that response, and yeah, as you're saying, I was just thinking, everyone's got an opinion, and there's different levels of education and different levels of beliefs, and when you get that echo chamber, it's a dangerous thing when someone picks up on that, and it grows and grows. Well, we talked about the start of the FBI. You became a bomb technician. That's a different direction than you took from military police and so on. What did that involve?
So I was actually working on the gang squad, and a very good friend of mine, Don Hamady, was the bombing coordinator for the Atlanta office. And he just kind of asked me one day if I wanted to do something different. I said, "Yeah, what do you got in mind?" He said, "Well, are you claustrophobic?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you?" And I kind of have a high threshold for doing stupid things and things that anybody else would probably see were a little bit dangerous. So I thought it just appealed to me. And I went through a series of tests and a series of interviews and what have you. I got picked. I got sent off to Redstone Arsenal in Alabama, which is where our public safety bomb technician course is. And a few months later, I was a public safety bomb technician. And a few months later, after that, I was in Kabul and putting pieces of bombs back together from car bombs and from personnel bombs and from EFPs and you name it.
Wow. So your role was piecing the puzzle together and trying to track back how this occurred.
Yeah, we actually had an organization over there called SEXY, and SEXY is what I call a backronym. A backronym is when you start with the word you want to have, and then you try to make an acronym out of it, as opposed to going the other way around. So someone said, "Let's call ourselves SEXY."
Americans do that a lot,
So
to be fair.
it was, yeah, exactly, we do. So this was the Combined Explosive Exploitation Cell, CEXC. So somebody said, good enough, close enough. Well, we're SEXY. And it was myself, and it was one FBI agent and one military EOD operator. My first one was a Navy guy. My second one was actually an Aussie clearance diver. And we called ourselves Two Men in a Truck because we were two guys with probably a minimum of kit in the EOD world. And we had a lightly armored, beat to hell Toyota Land Cruiser. And every time a bomb went off, we rolled out and lowered ourselves down into the pit and started picking up pieces of bombs and of vehicles and of people and trying to piece this whole thing back together and figure out who made it. That was our job.
Wow. My job was blowing stuff up.
I got to do some of that too. I did get to do some demo. In my second tour over there, we were doing what were called buybacks. You're familiar with ISAF, of course, the International Security Assistance Force.
Yep.
And I worked with ISAF to do these buybacks where these sources would sell us captured munitions that were otherwise going to end up in the hands of IED makers. And we paid just obscene amounts of money to sort of get them off the street or get them out of the culottes, if you will. Yep. And then we took them out in the middle of the desert and blew them up. That was tremendous fun, I will admit.
It is good fun, and it gets quite addictive with that shockwave. Yeah, my role was head of the method of entry cell, and actually we got you may know him through the FBI and through the law enforcement circles. Got Alan Brosnan of Tees coming on, another New Zealand SAS operator, but he's been in Mississippi for the last 30 years teaching explosive entry to law enforcement.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Him I haven't heard of. That's a name I haven't heard. At first I thought you were saying TDAC, which is the Terrorist Explosive Device Analytical Center in Alabama, which is very, very nearby. We go to the south to blow things up here. The Northerners don't like it all that much.
Is Mississippi north or south?
Mississippi is deep south.
Deep south. So
Mississippi and Alabama are right next to each other.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Tees Olive Group bought Tees around the 2000s, and then and Alan was always the artist and the boss there, and then he's branched out with a couple more, but he's been teaching those guys for many years, and it's yeah, it's interesting both sides. Like, you want to be an artist with a bomb to be able to make entry to places and prosecute the target and do those things, but your side was sort of reverse engineering it, so that's quite intriguing as well. Now,
yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. It was probably one of the most interesting things I think I did in the FBI were my tours in Afghanistan, for sure.
So FBI went to Afghan for that role?
Yeah, the FBI was in Afghanistan for a lot of different roles. We had people there that were organizing major crimes task forces. We were teaching the Afghans to stand up their own major crimes task forces. We had guys that were doing EPW, enemy prisoner of war interrogations. We had guys like me who were going out and jumping into smoking holes and pulling stuff out and trying to put bombs back together.
Well, again, a great segue to where I want to finish up on. I'd like to get your take on the Afghan withdrawal, given that literally your agency put so much effort in, and again, those political commentators, they're talking in generalizations. They're talking about the head of your guy James Comey, the head of the FBI, and as if he is the meaning of the FBI, but an operator on the ground, an FBI agent, they've got a lot of passion. I'm sure that everybody who was doing those roles had a lot of passion. What's your take on the Afghan withdrawal and all the energy you guys put into that place, and basically what the hell happened?
Yeah, so the withdrawal was a shit show. There's no nice way to say that, right? I mean, it just was. It was poorly planned, poorly executed. As far as I'm concerned, all this political finger pointing just pisses me off. It was Donald Trump's plan executed by Joe Biden's administration. So neither side can claim any moral high ground here. That said, how long do you fight a war? And how many American lives? And look, man, not just Americans. There were, I'm pretty sure there were some Kiwis died over there. There were some Aussies that died there. There were tons and tons of, so it wasn't just me. This is how long do we stay in a country and try to impose a system of governance on them that they are never in a million years? We're going to teach you democracy. No, you're not. No, you're not. These guys have been living in tribes and under whatever the hell kind of law it is that they call. It's not Sharia, but whatever the ugly stepsister of Sharia law is in Afghanistan. They've been doing that for a million years. We're not going to change them. And so okay, what do we do? Well, we had to do something, because the words that came back to us on 9/11 when we said give up bin Laden were get over it. That was kind of the words that came back from the Taliban, and they were harboring them. There has to be payback for that. This may seem a bit draconian, but I would visit death and hellfire on them from 50,000 feet next time, kill a few 100,000 of them, and say, don't make us come back. Or it'll be worse next time, but not one more American life. Not one more set of American legs, not one more set of American eyes. The war wounds. When you walk around a Veterans Administration center here, The war wounds that people brought back with them are just unbelievable,
I'm very
unbelievable.
glad you mentioned
Worse than
that.
any previous, worse than any previous war, because what we've done is we've gotten better at saving lives now. Things that used to kill you back in World War I, World War II, even Vietnam. You know, we can save your life now, but Jesus Christ, it's not going to be much of a life worth living.
No, not at all, not at all. And I was just watching Sean Ryan's show with a United States Marine that it was he lost an arm and just horribly disfigured, and he was talking about at the time Joe Biden met him. Crazy story, but you're so right. The body armor saves the core, but you know you're disfigured. But not only that, and like I said, I'm glad that you mentioned the injuries on returning, because the mental health injuries, which I've been lucky enough to speak with so many both professionals and operators on the show about. You mentioned about the Aussies dying. I don't know the number, but I'm going to generalize. I think it's around 4 times more. No, that's completely wrong. There's a lot of suicide post
Oh yeah,
post return compared to the amount of that were died in combat, and I think the numbers are huge for America as well. The amount of
yeah. It's
killed.
certainly we've definitely flipped it. There's more people. I don't know what the factor is or what the number is or the
Mm,
ratio is, but I do know that more American servicemen have come back and killed themselves than died in Afghanistan.
yeah, yeah, it's some crazy. 10 to 1 is a ratio if we're going that way that is resonating. Again, it's probably incorrect, but yeah. And kind of what you said, why would you try and change a place that they're not going to change, and then you just spent 20 years throwing bodies and billions of dollars at it, and literally, what was it, a week later the Taliban now have 80 million dollars worth of your gear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Did it take that long? I mean, we went over there with the idea of punishing them, and we should have stopped at punishment and not gone into the rehabilitation game. There is no changing them. There is no rehabilitating them. They are who they are. I'm terribly sorry, and I really mean this. It really sucks that a girl can't go to school there. That a girl can't grow up to be something there. It sucks. But at the end of the day, how many lives of New Zealand soldiers, how many lives of American soldiers, Aussie soldiers, how many are you willing to give up for that? I think we've all of us, we've paid our share. And I'm not trying to, say we need to be an isolationist country, but we need to really think hard before getting involved in something like that again.
And you said we, but the word that stood out there, Steve, was punish, and that is this last piece of the puzzle I wanted to get to, is politics versus law enforcement, politics versus war fighting. As an example, there, I don't punish anybody as a shooter. I roll into the building and I do what I do. Same with a police officer. You don't punish a good police officer, I'd have to say, or a good law enforcement officer. You're there to protect life and property. Our job was to protect. Our job was to rescue the hostages. A lot of people think,
Right?
SAS go in and shoot all the bad guys. If that's going to
Right.
rescue the hostages, sure. But our role is to rescue the hostages. That's all we care about. And we sure as hell not going to punish them, because we've got that controlled aggression. But when you said we, I'm thinking, who's pulling the strings here? So I want to touch on politics versus, in your role, the FBI. We've seen these government
Okay.
hearings, and you see Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, up there as the figurehead. How did that impact you in your role, and how do you see it impacting the FBI agents having to combat these politics and then the opinions that your country has from this sort of canned media?
Yeah, well, it's like everything else. We've sort of separated into two tribes. We become very Taliban-like in that way. You got the people who are staunch supporters of one guy, and the people who are staunch supporters of another guy. And then what they do is they weaponize. They're not, the FBI has not become weaponized. What's become weaponized is the perception of the FBI. And people use that every single day, and Donald Trump uses it to great advantage for himself. I can tell you right now, the FBI is pretty much the same one that I left. I've only been out for 5 years. And it's a bunch of hardworking young men and women who come to work every day and do their job, and don't care a whole lot about politics. If there was something I wish the FBI would do better, and this does start with Director Wray, but I think he's been doing a pretty decent job, it's perception management.
Yeah.
You know, when someone's talking shit about you, if they're wrong, get out there and say so. Don't sit back. Don't tell me you're taking the high road and we're gonna be quiet professionals. Well, there's a time to be a quiet professional, and there's a time to walk up and slap somebody in the face and say, knock it off. And I think we need to knock a few people in the face and say, knock it off. Stop making everything about you. This is the analogy that I use. Okay, I don't know if you played a lot of sports growing up. I played a lot of sports growing up, like a ton of sports: baseball, football. By that way, I mean American football. Basketball. I played in rec league, high school. I played in college. So I played a lot of team sports. I learned to lose, and I learned that 99% of the time when I lost, it was because I didn't do good enough or well enough. Okay. It wasn't because someone was out to get me. It wasn't because the deck was stacked. It wasn't because there was a vast right wing or left wing conspiracy against me. I just fucking lost. And we, as a society, and I don't know if it's the same way in New Zealand or Australia, we've lost the ability, the personal accountability to just say, hey, man, I didn't do good enough that time. Now, let's all gather around. Let's talk about how we can go back and kick it in the ass next time. And that's where I think we need to be. But it's a lot easier to just say, I was cheated. The FBI is out to get me. It's fake news. That's the big ones. Everything with which some people disagree is fake news. And then what we've done is we've become this country now where you're either all the way to the right wearing a MAGA hat and and praying before some false god, or you're all the way to the other side, the left, and you can't even say something like, October 7th, that was a terrorist attack on Israel and they have every right to defend themselves. We've reached the point where we can't even agree on anything anymore. And everybody is drawn to those extreme poles, and there's no room left in the middle for people like me. And so I'm kind of like a guy without a country right now, or a guy without a party.
I chat to my special forces buddies over there on the daily about what the hell is your government doing. But I think you nailed it. You said personal responsibility, accountability. I'd throw in there, and you actually, this would be paraphrasing how you said that. It's also reality check. You talked about the slap across the face. How about a reality check of what a word means? I watched a very educated man the other day. Words actually have been perverted. I can't think of them off the top of my head. The one that comes to mind is, what is a woman? Well, that's pretty simple. XY chromosomes, if we're going to go back to what you and I sport. I think we're close to the same age, But these words, we've allowed them to be perverted. And that's irresponsible, because those actually mean things. So we're on the same page there, and I think it comes down to that actual accountability and actual reality check. Dude, I've got two things, and I'll let you go. One, JFK. You're the only FBI guy I know, so I've got to ask you the question. Who do you think killed JFK? What happened there?
So that's actually one of the few. Remember when I said earlier, I can't think of any conspiracy theories that maybe make me go, That one makes me go a little bit of because that was a hell of a shot with that Mannlicher Carcano piece of crap Italian rifle that he allegedly bought for, I think, $12. I think he paid for the rifle. I think it was probably Oswald, but I think there was a hell of a lot more to it. I think the bullet came from Oswald's rifle. I think it came from the Texas School Book Depository. And I think there was a hell of a lot more to it that we're just never, ever, ever going to know. Anybody who's involved in it is dead right now. I have to laugh, though, when I hear people talking about the FBI being in on the conspiracy, because I can tell you for fact you cannot to get two FBI agents to agree on where to go to lunch together. So I call bullshit.
Yeah, it's amazing the things that are out there. You've got the mafia guys that are out now. I think it's Sammy Gravano and all these guys talking one side and anybody else talking the other, but had to get it from the horse's mouth. So good opinion.
Yeah.
And finishing up on literally reality check. I can't believe I managed to pull this show together like that. Is what is your book 2 about? What are we looking forward to hearing more about from your protagonist?
What is the book itself about? The Call Me Sonny?
Not Call Me Sonny, so that's the one you've got out. Awesome. But what's book 2
Okay.
about?
Okay. So the working title of it is Finding Sonny. So that should tell you something right there. It's not a huge spoiler, but I left a lot of things unresolved at the end of Call Me Sonny, including one gigantic slap in the face, literally on the last page of the book. And so all these things, and like when my publisher saw it, they said, okay, clearly this is going to be a series, right? I said, oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually trying to decide if this is going to be the second book and the end of the Sonny part of this. And you have to read the book to find out who Sonny is. I'm not going to tell that, but I'm trying to figure out if that's going to happen or if I'm going to turn this into a trilogy. And there actually is enough meat here to turn this into a trilogy. But even beyond that, it's billed as a Bryce Chandler crime thriller. So much the same as you have Hieronymus Bosch or any other literary character. Bryce Chandler's around for a while. He's not going anywhere.
Oh, I'm excited, and I might try and connect you with the guys I spoke about, Jack Carr and so on, because you guys definitely seem to be on the same page. Steve, it's an absolute pleasure and honor being able to chat to you and take that time. And it's the amazing technology we have in 2023. As I said at the start, there's an intro to this with the show notes. I talk through all those things and where to find you. But for now, where do people find more about you and your books?
So all of my social media handles are Steve Lazarus Books. So on Instagram, I'm Steve Lazarus Books. On TikTok and Facebook, I've also got SteveLazarusBooks.com. And yeah, if you put that into TikTok, I'm gonna come up. My kids, it's hysterical. My oldest daughter lives in New York City. One of her friends called me the other day and said, your dad went viral on TikTok, right? She said, yeah, that's some words I thought I would never ever hear in my entire life, because I was that curmudgeonly old guy who's like, I don't need this Facebook stuff. And I've only been on Facebook for like 3 years. And TikTok and Instagram but it just blew up. I'm bearing down on 250,000 followers on TikTok right now and 130,000 on Instagram, and I just I have no idea how this happened.
Must be a Chinese conspiracy.
It's probably a conspiracy. It's the Kennedy guys. They're out to get me. They want to silence me.
Oh man. Hey Steve, really cool to talk to you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Great to chat, and I'll hit pause. We'll have a chat afterwards. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You bet.
Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former Special Forces operator, and check out my new project for 2023 at hownottodie.com.au, where I've combined all my Special Forces training and police officer experience to help others. Thanks for watching.